Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat podcast, where, of course, in this edition, we'll be previewing Tottenham's next game in the Premier League, Chelsea away, and we will also be discussing the Liverpool away game this coming Sunday and talking about everything Tottenham Hotspur. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button, like, share and comment below. And if you're listening to it on an audio platform, please do hit that follow button and leave a review if you can. I've got three very special guests to talk about Tottenham Hotspur this evening. Back with us, channel regular Craig Dearman. Craig, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all good, Chris. Still recovering from Sunday, but getting there. Looking forward to. I'm not sure that's the right word to use, but quietly confident about Chelsea, which I wasn't immediately after the Arsenal game. But we'll get into it.
Quietly confident. One win in 34 years at Stamford Bridge. Quietly confident.
Oh no, I'm turning into Ricky Norwood. Sorry.
Back with us also is Celtic fan Ali Ross, all the way from Scotland. Ali, how are you?
I'm good, thank you very much.
You've been enjoying watching Spurs this season?
Yeah, I'm not surprised with anything that's happened, but yeah, I think a lot of fans up here are interested to see how he does. I think, I've enjoyed it.
And joining us for the very first time, we've got Sean Butler with us. Pleasure to have you here, Sean. Very welcome from the Spurs Talk Show. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris. Yeah, thank you for the invite, mate. Long-time admirer, first-time caller. So, it's good to be here. And, lots to talk about, lots to digest and analyse ahead of Chelsea. So thanks for the invite.
No problem at all. Very welcome and great to have you here. Sean, we're going to start the show with you because I want to get your thoughts on Tottenham Hotspur's season so far under Ange Postecoglou. Wanted to talk a little bit about the Arsenal game as well. How are you feeling when we were 3-0 down at half-time?
Not as bad as I think most people were. Like, I was a bit shell-shocked by the half-time scoreline, but I didn't think that we played badly. I think that, at half-time, I kind of felt about the same as I did towards the end of the game, even though we got back into it. I think a lot of people were describing it as a game of two halves. I don't think it was. I think there was a lot of consistent themes. I think Tottenham ultimately dominated in open play, or at least were, maybe not dominated is the wrong word, but certainly combative, certainly a match for Arsenal, who are one of the best teams in world football, in every department apart from clinical finishing and set pieces, which obviously I'm sure we're going to talk about. But overall, the in-play stuff for me, I thought we were pretty good. It was a really strange game, and like I say, to be 3-0 down, I think one of the brilliant takeaways about it is that the players didn't let their heads drop, and they continued the fight and got ourselves back into it. And Arsenal, much like Tottenham, we let ourselves down. We were a victim of, kind of the architect of our own downfall in the first half through set pieces, unnecessary weaknesses. And I think Arsenal also let us back into the game through silly mistakes as well. So it was a really strange North London derby, but I didn't feel too bad. I'm devastated with the result, but there was lots of positives to take from the performance. And in terms of the first season overall, Chris, look, I have to remind myself every week about what I was feeling going into the season. And, I said that I'm happy to see this play out. I know that there's going to be games where we're going to have really poor output, or, there's going to be sort of teams that are going to pick us apart as we go through the learning process. It is going to be one of those seasons. It's a free hit for me. And, whilst I think that Ange is the right guy, I'm 100% behind him. I want to let the jelly set on his philosophy. I want everyone to get behind it. He's not perfect. I definitely think that there's areas where he needs to acknowledge that there's room for improvement that I think he's not necessarily dialed into on too much of a focused level right now. But overall, for me, I think he's the right guy, and I love what I'm seeing in terms of open play with the philosophy. I'm someone who always prioritizes good football as the cornerstone of how I want a Tottenham team to play, and he's delivering that in the for the most part. So yeah, look, I'm on board it. I think that we're not that far away. A couple of changes, couple of personnel changes, few players here or there to the starting 11, a couple more in the overall squad, and with a couple of changes to the approach, but not necessarily requiring a philosophical adaptation, just some structural stuff at set pieces, and I think we'll be there or thereabouts next season. So I'm very positive still, and like I say, it's a roller coaster of a season, but I'm far more positive than I am anything else.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said, Sean, to be honest, because it is definitely about progression this season. We've seen entertaining football. We know what some of these players can do. We know that Ange Postecoglou is going to be backed in another transfer window this summer, and hopefully a number of decent players will come through the door. Craig, how are you feeling right now as a Spurs fan, and particularly the last couple of performances and results? Because although it has been good, although we have progressed, we have conceded 7 goals in the last 2 games and really struggling at set pieces. Ange Postecoglou has come out and said after the game, Arsenal, and of course the press conference today, that press conferences, he's got more to think about. He's got more to think about than set pieces.
Yeah, I mean, he probably has, to be honest. But we all know, and Ange will know, the set pieces are an issue. It's clear as day to everybody that the set piece defending is an issue. I've never personally liked zonal marking. I know we've done it in the past. I've never liked it because you saw it with Arsenal Sunday, and I'm sure there's other games where Arsenal had our number on that. There were 4 or 5 of them queuing up at the back post. Our players are static. I think, Sean, you hinted on this at one of your videos. Totally agree with what you said. And I've played football, as I've said before, not to anywhere near that standard, but football's football. And that run across the front post, if the ball's right and there's zonal marking, if you're a decent header of the ball and the ball's right, you're going to score. My friend Mark used to put in corners all the time, and I would say a third of my goals throughout my illustrious career playing non-league football, I got about a third of them headers from his corners. And although that's the basic sort of level, but Arsenal were doing that to us. They had the run on the defenders, and the defenders couldn't. You haven't got any momentum to jump. So that is an issue for me. Whether he'll change, I don't know what he did at Celtic. Where perhaps Ali can give us an update on that when you come round to Ali. I don't know whether he did zonal marking at Celtic. I couldn't tell you. But that's obviously an issue. I'm still 100% behind Ange. I think what is the point in chopping managers? I thought the other day, the last time we had a manager for a whole season was the 18-19 season when we finished runners up in the Champions League. I mean, that is astonishing. We cannot keep chopping and changing managers, So if Ange actually managed to last the last 4 or 5 games, whatever we got, he's done better than Conte, he's done better than Mourinho, he's done better than Stellini. So, we've got to stick with this guy. I agree what Sean said. There are issues he's got and things he needs to iron out, and he'll still be learning a lot about this team. And the players, which I'm sure we'll come on to in the summer, that we should be targeting, should give him more options in key positions. The positions we all know that we'd like to strengthen in, the number 6, a backup to a doggy, perhaps another goalkeeper, although Brandon Austin obviously is perhaps climbing the pecking order there, a number 9 to challenge Richarlison. Who knows what players are going to go out the door. So overall, I'm still positive. I've had time to reflect on Sunday's performance, and we've played worse than that. And, I don't think it was the worst performance of the season. I think Newcastle probably falls into that bracket. But end of the day, as Sean said, Arsenal are one of the best sides in Europe, and we're not quite at their level yet. And we've got to accept that. And we've got a chance to put it right against an up and down Chelsea team who have had the better of us at Stamford Bridge over the years. But I think if we're going to put a marker down and make a statement, we've got to put in a performance tomorrow night against Chelsea. That would be the best remedy to try and heal the pain of the last 2 games.
I want to ask every single one of you this question. Craig, I'll start with you on this because, Sean said there about, us coming back into the game in the second half and showing real spirit in that second half. We've seen it a lot this season where we've struggled in the first half in particular. Why do you think that is? Because when the team come out in the second half, you know the capabilities of a lot of these players. You know that they can do it. We've seen it earlier on in the season, particularly the first 10 games. What is it about the first half performances for you in the last couple of months, certainly?
It's a weird one, isn't it? Yeah, it's very strange because we do usually start the first 5-10 minutes like a house on fire and we go 100 miles an hour. And then seem to let the other team kind of work us out, get back into the game, and then they hit us and we drop a little bit, even though that's something Ange doesn't like, but you let them have a bit more possession. And I think it's just the counter-attacks, which most teams are going to play against us, even some of the better ones. Even Arsenal were doing it to a certain extent on Sunday because we had a lot of possession Sunday, And yeah. I think we're just vulnerable still to to certain plays and certain counter attacks, and ultimately set pieces. Because obviously, if you're going down the wing, you get a cross in, defender blocks it, it goes out for a corner. We know that's a weakness of ours, so they've got a cast iron chance to score against us. And Vicario's obviously still learning the Premier League, but he's got to be stronger in certain positions. And I'd just love to see him just shove somebody out of the way. I wouldn't have had that from Ben White, playing with his gloves. It was just all a bit too weak for me. So I think really it's you can clearly see they don't want to concede corners. The players look nervous at set pieces, and that's a majority of where the goals against us are coming from at the moment.
Ali, let's come to you. Craig said there he didn't know whether Celtic last season played zonal marking or man-to-man marking. How did Ange set up for Celtic, and what have you made of Ange Postecoglou at Spurs this season? Because even after the weekend's result against Arsenal in that performance, in the Newcastle game, I've seen a number of fans saying that they don't think Ange is the real deal, and some want him to go.
A lot to take in, really. I don't think it's a matter of... I don't like zonal marking, and I don't like Celtic playing it. But I don't suppose it's down to that. It's down to the personnel he's got. He's going to play with whatever he feels is right for the personnel, and I think that is the down thing on everything. I mean, to stop set pieces, he'll blame the whole team for that, not just who's not making the headers in the box or stuff like that, because to get the set piece, they've got to get the corner or the free kick in the first place. So you'll want to cut down on the amount of set pieces opposition are getting for a start, rather than, he'll try and stop it at the root of the cause rather than, try and defend the cause. Is how I would see it. It's kind of what he reduced that at Celtic quite a bit, I thought, because our players didn't make as many mistakes in the second season because they were used to the whole format of the system and how he plays. So I'm not so sure that's it. And yeah, look, he's had... I know you've had the New Year window. He's had one window. He's lost, your main goal threat, and you've got to ask yourself what you're expecting. I mean, would Eddie Howe, or Poch or any of these other guys that are supposed to be decent managers, would any of them come in and done any better? And
correct.
How many of your managers in the past 10 years or whatever would have even been top six without Kane? So I think that's, he plays a style of football, and people say he's naive for playing all-out attack, and people keep talking about a plan B. I heard Martin O'Neill the other day talking about plan B. He said there's no such thing, and he's right, because a manager could put on 3 substitutes and then lose 2 goals. That's a bad plan B, if you understand what I mean. So I know what people mean is that he's just all-out attack. Sometimes he needs to be a bit more conservative. We said that about Europe when we got pummeled in Europe by teams, but we still tried to fight those teams rather than just sit back and defend and hit them on the break. So it depends what you want. He's going to have another window, which I think he'll improve the team again. And with the players he's got, imagine if you are used to having to run, say, 6K in a game. They're now having to run 10. And that takes your body and your recovery time and everything a lot of time to get used to, And you see that from young kids coming through, having to build up the bulk, having to do all of that. So some of it's about actually understanding what football is. And you can make all the excuses in the world, but, I mean, he's lost a lot of hard, good players at bad times in the season. They're coming back from injury, so they're probably not 100%. And he hasn't got a big enough squad because the people that are coming to replace them are not as good. So I think they're the questions that need to be asked first, is what is it you want and what do you expect from anyone? Because at the start of the season, as you all know, it was a shit show, really. You didn't know what you were going to get. You didn't know, what manager could have come in and done what he's done so far in such a quick turnaround with pretty much the same personnel. Change the style of football, more attacking, exciting football. Yeah, he's lost a couple of games, a couple of them being hammerings and stuff, and you could argue that Arsenal took the foot off the pedal, but they didn't look like they were taking the foot off the pedal. Arsenal still looked like they were up for it, and I think Tottenham just got themselves back into the game, and that's a hard thing to do when you're having a bad half. So I think he'll take positives from this season, and I think he'll look at it and say, right, this is what we need to do to be better next season. And it's all about improvement for him. He doesn't care about getting beat 5-0 in one game, I don't think. Well, he does care about it. That's the wrong words. But he'll look at that and he'll take that down to experience to try and make sure it doesn't happen again. But he'll not see that about, oh, right, we're a rubbish team now because we got beat in the last 2 games, because they're not. You know, he'll give you reasons why they got beat, and yeah, we just weren't at it. And it's about getting that mentality so they're at it more often next season. And he's about improving the whole squad going forward every season. And, I'm not funny, Pep, all of them, they've all got plenty of time to build their teams. And, I mean, they had like here, Aguero, for instance. That's like, if Celtic never had a Henrik Larsson, would that have interrupted us? Yeah. If Van Nistelrooy never got into Man United, would that have made them as good? York and all that. You could go through a load of teams that won because of certain people. Where would Tottenham be today if they had a Harry Kane type player, even if it wasn't a Harry Kane? They'd be further up the league. I mean, if you ask me, is Emery going to do the same again next year, and will he be 4th next year if he gets 4th this year? I'm not so sure he could improve that team that much better than what
Sean, let's come to you, because I completely agree with what Ali's saying there about expectation, because I expected us to finish around 7th or 8th at the start of the season, particularly losing Harry Kane. I know we had a good transfer window, but of course, Ange Postecoglou's first season. However, that Newcastle game, after that, it really worried me in the fact that how we set up on corners, defending corners. We had 15 days to prepare for that Arsenal game. I know, a lot of people think that I'm very positive about Spurs and often get called a happy clapper, but 15 days before that Arsenal game, to prepare, and we're still using that exact same system for the North London derby. When, I use your words, one of the best teams in the world, Arsenal, come to our stadium and we defend like that. But Ange doesn't seem that concerned about the set pieces at the moment.
Yeah, it is a concern, and I'll go beyond that. Like I say, I'm 100% behind Ange, and I think you have to give him time, especially because I'm not sure if he's ever used this word, but I think it's a word that gets bandied around quite a lot. It's rigid fluidity, where the only thing that's rigid in his approach to football is the philosophy of, we don't sort of hook the ball clear. We're always looking for a way to progress the ball up the field. But in terms of the fluidity side of it, he essentially abdicates a little bit of responsibility. He hands that over to the team, the individuals, to figure it out on the pitch. He gives them the license and the creativity to occupy spaces that are a bit unorthodox for players in the positions that are doing it. We saw it with Christian Romero moving into the kind of second striker role on the weekend. You even heard about, on the press conference today, when he was asked about Vicario, is there an issue with his, strength at the corner kicks? And he was like, well, it's a problem that Vicario is going to figure out, and I trust him to do it because he's got the mental resilience to figure it out. And my takeaway from that is it's a lot of responsibility to hand over to a team of players who are relatively nascent in their experience playing together. We have had quite a lot of sort of turnover in the squad over the last 18, 24 months. And if you're going to hand over the responsibility to players to allow them to have the creative liberty, the freedom, the license to be able to kind of move into areas where, the opposition are going to have to track and follow you if you're playing against a man-to-man system, then it requires a certain specific type of individual. Put the technical stuff to one side. The players can be really good at kicking, passing, tackling, all that stuff. But it also requires all 11 of the players on the pitch to have a really solid footballing IQ and intelligence to be able to anticipate what your teammates are going to do and then make your own reaction to it that makes sense. It requires each of the individuals to have the bravery and the courage to be able to be the genesis of that creative movement. And obviously Romero did that. And it sounds to me like a lot of the answers to the problems, Ange is sort of saying, I want the team to figure it out. I want them to go through the process of learning how to play together. And as a system, these guys are going to work, figure it out amongst themselves, which is fine to a degree. But I would also argue that that's a kind of empowerment management technique that you could also, if you were a bit more glass half empty, describe or, summarize it as saying, well, what does that mean? What are you doing? What are the coaching staff doing if ultimately it's on to the 11 players? And if you're on board it, and I am, I am on board it. And I do think we have a nucleus of a really strong squad, a young squad. But if you are on board it, if you were on board it at the start of the season, if you were on board it after 10 games when we were top of the league, then you should still be on board it now, because you have to give that time. As I said, I've said it a few times now, purely because I tried to cook some jelly this week and it didn't set before I tested it. But I think you have to let the jelly set. I think you have to give it time for this thing to sort of pan out. And at the end of next season, or halfway through next season, if we're still making the same mistakes, if we haven't learned any lessons, then I think that there's question marks that have to be asked. But in terms of the philosophy, that doesn't have to change. You can still have the overarching embrace the ideology that Ange wants us to follow. And that doesn't have to be shifted or pivoted away from in any way, shape, or form to make some simple adjustments to the set pieces. And it does worry me when he doesn't see it as an issue, when we've conceded, I think, 9 goals this calendar year. And I think 50, I'm not sure if the stats are correct, but 15 over the entire season. And it seems like the frequency of this happening has amplified several times over since Everton. I think it was Everton that were the first team, or maybe it was Man City that were the first team that kind of latched onto this concept. And it doesn't look like we're getting any better at it. And that to me is a concern. And it's a concern that Ange is saying, I'm focused more on the bigger picture stuff. And in terms of Vicario, he's going to have to figure it out. In terms of the players, they're going to have to figure it out. All right, well then, if that's the case, then these players have to show leadership and courage and get together and figure it out. But I still think that these players are not going to move away from a zonal system unless they are tactically instructed to do so. And that requires Ryan Mason or Jedinak or whoever it is who's doing that to actually educate these guys on a different method of defending corners. And if you get that right, you probably save yourself 15, you probably concede 15 to 20 fewer goals, next season if you fix that. And I only think we're 35 goals swing away from being up there with the likes of City, Arsenal, and Liverpool. If we get the players in to be able to convert more chances and open play at the top end of the pitch, you're scoring 15 goals more. If you fix the set pieces, you're conceding 20 goals fewer. That to me is enough of a difference to be able to put yourself in a title race. And so, yeah, it's a simple tactical change. Doesn't require a philosophical approach, but as of yet, we haven't seen any noise from Ange that he's focused on it in any meaningful way. And that is the biggest concern that I have, is acknowledgement that there's a problem.
Sean, what do you make of the fans that are criticising Ange Postecoglou at the moment? Because after those first 10 games, I think a lot of people expected a whole lot more. And Ange has said in his press conferences a number of times that he wants the big prizes. He wants to go for the Premier League, and he wants to be in a position in 12 months' time to be challenging. And he even wanted a trophy this season. But if you flipped it up and the first 10 games were the last 10 games, because I just see it as the business end of the season is when, things are meant to be getting better. In April and May, you don't expect to be in this position as fans saying, oh my God, we're conceding all these goals. Oh my God, all these chances, set pieces. We're frightened to concede a corner. Are you surprised by, we are in the month we are and we're having these problems? Because would it have been easier for fans to accept if it was the start of the season and then the first 10 games where we were unbeaten were at the end of the season?
Yeah, that would be the most ideal situation to be in, because I think that would show, ultimately when you're trying to play a system that is not that's not a jack of all trades, like an Unai Emery or an Eddie Howe or a David Moyes. Like these guys sort of are more adaptable. They like to kind of set up according to the opposition. He's trying to be a master of one. And ultimately the question mark then is always, how quickly is, like the game of cat and mouse, how quickly are the opposition that you're playing against learning how to play against you relative to how quickly you are improving the version of yourselves that you're putting out every week? And I think we are improving relative to the version that we saw at the start of the season. I know that sounds crazy given the results and the performances, but I think the bigger difference is that the opposition are improving faster. They're closing the gap faster on us relative to how quickly we're improving. So we're moving forward, but I think opposition are figuring us out quicker. And that's a concern because obviously if that doesn't change, then next season we're not going to have the 10-game head start that we had last season. And we're going to be struggling against a lot of mid-table or lower table teams. But like I say, I really hope that if you bring in a couple of key additions in the 9, the 6, the winger position, and you bring in some better squad depth, then that in and of itself is going to improve the output with the ball. And unless you have a tactical adaptation from structural plays, set pieces, not just corners, by the way, free kicks. I mean, I don't know if you saw the free kick I think it was 2-0 at the time. Declan Rice whips a ball in. There's 3 Arsenal players at the back post. One of them takes out Sarr. Oh, no, sorry, it was in the second half. One of them takes out Sarr, who's the last man. And then Tomiyasu has a free header. And then the left back is also free in case it goes over his head. So it's not just corners, it's free kicks as well. Unless there is an approach that's taking on that, then I don't think we're going to have the output and the net goal difference that's going to be enough to kind of correct the mistakes. But in terms of would the fans be happier if it had been the other way around? Of course they would, because it would demonstrate that we're improving relative to our opposition, and it doesn't look like we are at the moment. But I still think we are getting better at Ange ball. Mm-hmm. I just think that other teams at the moment have got a template on us, which is a problem.
Craig, before I come to you, just got a clip here from Matt Mackay, who used to play for Brisbane Roar and Australia under Ange Postecoglou. He speaks here about set pieces, about what Ange is like at half time, and he also says to all of us Spurs fans, don't lose faith in Ange.
Hi Chris and the Spurs Chat podcast. Now Ange, he'll have a plan in place to deal with the set pieces, but he does like to delegate well. He includes all his staff, and I can already see his comments that he's got Millet looking after set pieces. Now he knows he has to improve, or the team has to improve, and you've had a fantastic first season with him, and he'll be able to evolve that even more with either personnel changes or new tactics come next season as well. So don't lose faith. He's a very good manager. He can give you a rocket at half time if you're not doing what it's expected. He's got high standards, and he holds you accountable for those standards. So if he is disappointed, he'll let it know. But most of the time, he's pretty concise and articulate in how he wants things done and how he presents his halftime chat. So and tactics, I think tactics it's pretty straightforward. I think you understand he's not going to change. He has a certain way of playing, and the players buy into that and play that way. So it's been fantastic to watch, and hopefully they can have a one final push at the end of this season with some difficult fixtures, but he'll have a lot of time to plan in the summer break, and hopefully the team improves from there as well. So all the best for the rest of the season.
Craig, let's come to you on Matt's comments there. Tactics are straightforward. He is not going to change. What do you make of that?
It's kind of what we knew, kind of what he said from the start, and what Ali told us way back in June when we had him on for the first time, that Ange has got his system, he sticks to it, and that's it. And there's no plan B, because plan A should work. Is basically what he's saying. It's all out attack. It's certainly been entertaining. I've certainly been entertained this season. That's gone up 100% since the Conte days, I must say. But look, Ange, from what we've all learned this season, he almost doesn't like reporters questioning anything. He's very contrary, isn't he? No matter what somebody says, he'll say the opposite. He certainly doesn't. Not a lot of managers don't like being questioned on anything tactically or anything like that.
He actually avoided a number of questions in the press conference today. That's what I noticed. Yeah.
I saw that. I watched the video earlier. It's very interesting. It's clear that I think there's an element that he's trying to take the pressure off the players. He won't want to come on there and say no, and no decent manager would say, if somebody asked him our set pieces, do you see that as an issue? If he turns around and says, "Oh God, yeah, we're bloody awful at set pieces," he's not going to say that. He will know. He only says what he wants the press to have access to. He'll be saying something completely different behind closed doors to the players. I guarantee that. They're going to know where the issues are. But I mean, I'm sure we'll come on to players. But saying we did get this, I think it's been bandied around. I know, Sean, you've mentioned a monster number 6. Now, whether that Bergvall that we've got coming in is a monster number 6, I don't watch the Swedish league that much at all. I don't know. I've just seen clips of him on YouTube. And you've also got Gallagher from Chelsea that we're in. I wouldn't say he's a monster number 6. He never really excited me. Is he better than what we've got? You know, with Basuma and Bentancur and so, I don't know. He's a decent player. I'm not sure. Although, you know, look, Ange loves him from everything we're led to believe. So I do believe too, what like Sean said, we are just a few players away from, I'm not saying winning the Premier League. I'd never be, you know, that it's a bit much to say, isn't it? So I would never say that. We're not anywhere near that position yet, but just to challenge a bit more, to push perhaps up the table, to
Close the gap.
Close the gap. Great analogy. And, you know, with the likes of, if we get players in like Neto from Wolves or Eze or Elise or what's the other one I've written down here? The one you like, Sean, the one chap from Feyenoord, the striker, Jimenez. He was, he was at the stadium Sunday. Very good players. Look, we're not that far away, and I would just. I know. Look, I get called Happy Clapper as well, so it's not just you, Chris, or Sean. But there's more to be positive about than downbeat. If you actually take a step back and look at the season as a whole, and look where we've come from, and what the shit show we was in like this time last year, and look where we are now, and we're still building. And
But,
look,
Craig, sorry to interrupt. Is Ange putting more pressure on himself by saying that we are going to be in the title race in 12 months' time?
Yeah, definitely. But he wouldn't say it if he didn't genuinely believe it.
Because
there's a difference between competing in the league and challenging for the league. Two different things in my view. And Ange will see that. That's what he's saying. At the moment, you're competing in a strong league. He wants to be in that top three that were challenging for the league this year by this time of the season. That's what he's saying. And that's what he's trying to build to. Now, I didn't hear that comment. It's not like him to make a broad statement like that. But there's a lot of things I've picked up with what you're saying there. So, I mean, the first 10 games, people didn't know what to expect with Ange. And you heard all the hysteria. And then teams realised, right, how do we counter that? Because if they didn't try to counter it, then they weren't going to live with it. And teams started to counter it. It's simple as that. Teams with Ange, with Celtic as well, we did struggle with teams that pressed us. You know, if they were good at pressing you, then it is hard. But then that comes down to your own players having the ability to take the ball in tight spaces and be brave. So when he talks about, you know, Ange knows all about the problems about your set pieces and, you know, everything else that the guys get enough information to go on that pitch to win that game of football, you know, and then you're leaving it and he leaves the responsibility with them to take ownership of that, which is the right thing to do because they need to take ownership on the pitch. That's the type of people he wants if he wants to get up the table in the league. You know, all your top players take ownership and they get involved. You know, you don't see that as much with Tottenham. You're starting to see it a bit now. You know, Son straight away has took ownership of what he needed to do this season. People like that. He needs more players like that that'll take ownership of their own little area of the pitch. If you understand what I mean. So he's not sitting back saying, I'm not worried about the set piece situation. I'm not worried about this. What he's saying is there's nothing I can do about that just now because of the personnel I have. Do you understand what I'm saying? He's basically, he's not conceding it. He's saying, and you say there's 15 days. That might have been a bad thing if they had 15 days without a game.
Yeah.
You know, because if you look at everything he tries to do, he wants to go boom, 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 boom. He wants them at it all the time. If they've had a bit of time to relax, then, you know, it is hard to come back into it sometimes. It's like a winter break. If everyone's got a winter break, fine. But if you're playing a team that's been playing regular and you've got a 15-day break, that can affect how the team then comes out. You get one scudding, it then makes your next game against one of the best teams hard. You can come up with loads of reasons why it's happened, what's happened. I've seen some of the comments there. You know, one of the lads had put at Celtic, you know, he gave them all the information they needed. You know, analysis, the lot. They've got stuff to take home with them and everything, the players. So it's not like he's saying, I'm putting them onto the pitch and leave them to it. You know, what he's saying is, we've done all that in training. I shouldn't have to do it on match day. They know what they're doing. They know what they've got to do. They know how to win a game of football. That's the plan. It's not just about plan A, because plan A would just be too easy to call it plan A because there's so many moving parts in Ange's team that he's almost got a plan A to D within the way he plays. It's just that is plan A, is to have all these different things all going, because a lot of teams can't do that. So I just think that he needs better personnel in certain areas. He needs a bigger squad. He needs a goal scorer, you know. You look at Arsenal, for instance. I'll give you an example. Then they've got Declan Rice and Odegaard. Yeah. Now you need two players like them because they can dominate a midfield. Because it's all fine having great wingers and your wing backs are doing their job and things like that. But if you've not got boys that can work in tight spaces and identify danger, then you've got a problem. And I spoke to Craig the other night there, and I said, you're not going to go and spend 180 million to get those two players when you need a striker. Yeah. So you've got to look at what options are out there. I mean, I've mentioned before, obviously, Billy Gilmore. I think he's a good player. John McGinn's another one. Now, you probably only pay 80 million for both of them. But I think that would be an upgrade because of how they would be able to dominate in tight areas because they can do that. So I'm just giving you examples. I'm not saying they're the ones you would go for, but that's what Ange will be looking for. He needs people, because he had Callum McGregor at Celtic Park, who would take the ball in, and he does it in Champions League. He does it in World Cup, not World Cups, because he does it in all the different things that he does. He can play at the top level at that. And some of the Tottenham players are just not doing that just now. So that's what he means by on the pitch, they need to manage that. And it's the individual players need to manage their own area, their own space, and how they're playing. That's my opinion.
You know what, Ali? Just quickly on that, mate. I've been saying it, since before Ange managed his first game for Tottenham. When he first came in, I did a significant amount of research trying to understand how Celtic played with Ange. And Callum McGregor, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Callum McGregor was the linchpin. I know you had, Kyogo and you had a lot of players up front that were doing the business with the numbers, but Callum McGregor was just such a like the cornerstone of that system. And as I was comparing him, no disrespect to Celtic or to the Scottish Premier League or to Callum McGregor, but if you're trying to replicate Callum McGregor, but of a Premier League title winning sort of standard, then I was looking at the team, that the players we've got, and it's very easy for Tottenham fans to look at certain players in the Tottenham squad and say, well, we know he's not of the level, like Ryan Sessegnon, or maybe people think about Højbjerg, that sort of thing, or Ben Davies, Eric Dyer before he left. Those sorts of players, everyone can kind of have a consensus on. But there's a lot of popular Tottenham players like Bissouma, like Bentancur, who were brilliant when they first came to Tottenham, or in the case of Bentancur, brilliant under Conte. But I don't think that any of our midfielders quite have the variables in their skill set to replicate what that six is required. The responsibility of playing, sitting in front of the back four, protecting, offering the ability to kind of cover spaces. So you need mobility, you need footballing IQ, you need a wide passing arrangement. You also need a controlled aggression. I just don't think that Bentancur has it. And people are going to, people don't like hearing that because he's a popular player. But you know what? Square pegs, round holes. Some people, horses for courses. Some people are brilliant players, but just not brilliant for a certain system. And Tottenham have to fix that six role, that Callum McGregor, trying to get the guy who most closely replicates him and what he can do, but of a different level. That fixing that is almost for me as important as finding a goal scorer or finding someone who's better and more direct with take-ons. And if you don't have that, then you have to work with what you've got. And I don't think enough people that are willing to criticize Ange's first season and what's happened since the Chelsea game. People go, yeah, you know what? We got through that sort of 8-9 game period where we were without Van der Ven, without Romero, without Maddison, etc. And then the reason why I'm frustrated and concerned is that since we've got our first team back, we haven't kicked into gear and progressed like we did in the first 10 games. And therefore, Ange is a problem. Therefore, Ange's tactics are a problem. I would argue that you should look at certain players that are pivotal and absolutely essential for them to have high output every single week for us to be able to deliver what Ange Ball requires. And if you look at players like Maddison, since his injury, he hasn't been at it. He's been absolutely nowhere near good enough. Sonny, despite getting 15 goals, he's just not the right guy to play. Sonny's the world's best in certain scenarios. If you put a ball over the top and he's a one-on-one with the keeper, there's nobody in world football I'd rather have in that scenario than Sonny. But how many times is he going to face that scenario in an Ange Ball system that increasingly faces low block, counter-attacking opposition, even against the top six? Teams like Arsenal are willing to give you the ball. They know how to play against you. So if Sonny is only going to have fewer and fewer scenarios where he is the perfect guy as a 9, and as a 7 or as a winger, he's lost a little, half a yard of pace. And if he's the best forward we have, and even his value is dwindling in this system, I think that more not criticism, but more acknowledgement of the rationale as to why we've struggled in the second half of the season and in 2024. More of that has to be aimed at certain players in this squad that Tottenham fans generally have a lot of love for and not pulling their weight.
I completely
think
agree.
What you need to look there, Sean, with Sonny, as you were saying, is that if he's got the movement, if you look at how Kyogo has a lot of movement with Celtic, so under Rodgers he's struggling a bit more because we don't have the wingers making the assists as much as we did when Ange was there. Yeah. So the whole thing with Sonny is that he needs that movement in front of him because he is, when he had that relationship with Kane, he's got an eye for an assist quite well. And what that movement also does will make up a lot of space for Sonny to make movement in and do the same thing because he's got that quick thought of mind. So I don't think Sonny will be an issue. And when you talk about that defending the defence, the Celtics was never really set up to defend defence. The Celtic were set up to defend as a team. And Calmac was more like a pivot where he would take the ball and build the attacks rather than be there to just stop. All the midfield were expected. And sometimes that pivot would be swapped about between him and other players within the team. Awata's come in just now. He's doing a great job because Gregor's been injured. But that's just down to the fact that he knows what the role is and he understands it and goes playing it. Now, to me, it's about understanding the role. So you were mentioning a couple of guys that played well in the previous seasons. That's fine when you're playing counter-attacking football rather than attacking football. Now, they might just not be arsed putting in the yards to do what they need to do to be fitting to Ange's whole ethic. So, as I say, he's changed the whole system. So he's going to have to find players, like you say, that will work to that system, which will then lessen the amount of goals you concede down to the fact that you're pushing more up, you're breaking down the play more up the pitch rather than in your own last half and last third. So that's his whole ethic, is we keep the ball up there, and we attack them up there and we get the ball off them up there. And yes, there's going to be counter-attacks that come. That's when you then need that speed of thought and awareness from your own players. Now, if he's not getting that, he'll identify that straight away because his whole system is based on his personnel and he has to be able to trust them, because if he can't, then how can you go that gung-ho without trusting all your players? If you know what I mean? They have to play to the system rather than, all right, okay, you're a great player, let's try and fit you in, which is what a lot of managers end up trying to do. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of the problems will be solved with personnel. And I've just seen a guy there that Spurs need a Scott Brown type player. He was exactly the type of player that probably could do that for you, Now, I'm not saying that he could definitely play at that level. I think he could have, but a lot of people would argue he couldn't because he never played at that level. But he managed to do it in Europe against the big boys, if you understand what I mean. And that was with a Celtic team. So I'm pretty confident there are certain players we've had that could do that. So there's a lot needing done still. He didn't solve all your problems by coming out and doing well in the first 10 games. What he did is he gave you hope that you were going to have a good season. That's all he's given you. What he said is
expectations, Ali, right? And then you have unreasonable fans that are then holding you to that level.
On top of it and get it to what he needs. So our second season was far better, and we were looking forward to going to Europe, because that would be the challenge. That's the challenge for anyone in Scotland, Celtic or Rangers, basically, because it's how well you do in Europe is how you get judged. Because realistically, in the league, you're only getting judged against each other. Most leagues in Europe are like that. Everyone talks about Scotland being a 1 or a 2 team league. Most leagues are like that. It's just, it's perception. So, yeah, he needs better players, mate. It's as simple as that. And they need to back him this year. He probably needs about 5 or 6 players that are not only able to be first team ready, which they all need to be, he needs to be able to fit them all in with the squad he's got, because he loves to put 2 or 3 subs on about the 60-minute mark because people are knackered. And this season he's had to keep players on the park. You wonder why you're getting injuries. That all of that makes a difference when he's got that squad. So what I'm saying is he's never been given the tools this season to achieve what his system can do. And I love listening to pundits and everyone else talking about how that'll never work down here. Look, Pep went and did it with Barcelona and nobody thought that was the way to play. Yeah. Arteta, he's not got the experience. He's never going to do it, right? What made the difference for Pep and what made the difference for Arteta? They got quality players in playing the system they wanted, right? And that's what makes the difference for a manager. You get him the quality he needs to go and move the team forward. So he needs a striker that's got good movement in the box. Yeah. He needs a number 6 that can understand and build the play and dictate the play. You know, and he probably needs a couple of them, not just one. You know, he's going to need, he'll want a couple of players that can interchange, because when one's up pressing, the other one's got to fall in and cover that role, kind of thing. So everything's moving in his team, and they are told all this at training. He did the training session things on the videos and stuff. So you can see that they get told what they need. They just need that quality to be able to do it. And if he hasn't got the personnel to do it, then he'll make them aware.
Sean, let's come back to you about the midfield options, because when you look at all of our midfield players on paper, it looks an exceptional lineup. We've spoke on the podcast for the last couple of months, particularly after the games. You know, I've been asking a number of the guests who they think the 3 best midfielders, you know, are at the football club right now. And, you know, if I was to ask you who you think should play against Chelsea. Now, very complimentary about Christian Romero. There's been a lot of talk this week, or particularly since the Arsenal game, amongst the fans about Christian Romero perhaps even playing as a number 6, because we've seen him further forward, certainly in the Arsenal game and other games this season. And he was our biggest goal threat as well on Sunday, which was quite weird. But your thoughts about Romero perhaps playing as a number 6 in this game against Chelsea, and Radu Dragushin, you know, we haven't even mentioned him yet. He signed for Spurs, turned down Bayern Munich. He's had very, very limited minutes. He must be very unhappy right now.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. I think he will be, and frustrated, especially when he sees, you know, Eric Dyer playing the majority of minutes for Bayern Munich and in a Champions League semi-final. So, yeah, maybe he's starting to question his decision. But listen, I think that with regards to Dragushin, I think that there's, you know, context to that. We signed him having lost Romero and Van de Ven for an extended period of time. You bring in the guy that you needed at the start of the season to come in, and then as soon as he comes in, Romero and and Van de Ven both get back to full fitness, and then haven't had a problem since. So it's a bit of bad luck in that regard. I do think that next season he'll get enough minutes. We're playing on, you know, multiple fronts. Hopefully we get more games in the cups and obviously Europe as well. So I don't think there's a problem for Dragushin. In terms of Romero playing as the 6, like
sorry, Sean. The only reason I mentioned that, and I think it's a highlighted point here, because this season I think it's about 25 different combinations that Postecoglou has played in midfield. So why not give him a go?
Well, I think that at this stage of the season, if we're experimenting now for next season, I'm okay with it. I did a video about him the other day and talked about this particular concept. It's something that I've examined a long time ago. I've always thought he has the capabilities to do it. In terms of if you're looking for what my version of a Monster 6 looks like, he does tick most of the boxes as long as his aggression is controlled. I do think there'd be scenarios where if he was to lose his head like he has in the past, then he would be more, you know, susceptible to red cards in that position than he is at centre back. But I think he's getting on top of that aggression thing. Certainly, he's one of the best passers as a centre back in the Premier League, top 3, I think. So he can do all of it. I think there's also considerations around whether or not, you know, he prioritises his country, not necessarily above Tottenham, but it's certainly a big deal for him. I don't know whether or not if he was asked to adjust and adapt and become a kind of full-time 6, a full-time midfielder, how would he feel about that if it meant that his position in Argentina was under threat? It's probably more competitive to compete for a DM role in Argentina, competing with McAllister and Enzo Fernandez and Ezequiel Palacios, than it is competing with the centre-back options. That's not to say that every person who plays for their country plays the same position for their club. There's lots of examples. You know, John Stones, Valverde, Camavinga, Alphonso Davies, they all play different positions for their club, for their country. So there's not necessarily a thing, but I think it's a consideration. Do I think that he is the right solution? As an experiment, I'm happy to see it. I'm happy to see it for Chelsea and even Liverpool if necessary. But really, I think that in terms of it being the solution next year, not really. I personally think that you need to... I know that Ange likes versatility. That's why he's looking at players like Conor Gallagher. for me, I'm all on board versatility. I think it's important that you have players that can do a multiple amount of different shifts and different utility. However, I think that there's certain positions on the park that need not a jack of all trades, but a master of one. And I think the 6 for me is one of those positions where you just need someone who knows how to do everything, doesn't have to have that learning period, that adjustment period where he's moving out of the role of in the case of Romero, a centre-back staple into a 6. I think that we should go after players. And look, I did a video, there's like 10 different options that I think would all fit the bill. But for me, the most reasonable and likely candidate, I think you could go after someone like Maddison at Atalanta. I think he's a wonderful 6. I think he would absolutely transition into the Premier League. I think João Gomez at Wolves is a really interesting player that could do the job. I think Palhinha, even though he probably doesn't fit the profile of what Levy would pay for, 28 years old, probably going to cost a lot of money. Is he really going to be something that Levy's up for? Probably not. But there's a whole host of players out there. Florentino in Benfica, another player that I think you could go after that would be perfect for this role. I just don't think that there's any point in taking him out of the centre-back role and asking him to transition. Only if it did work as an experiment, then Tottenham would have to go and spend a lot of money getting another centre-back in the summer. And I just don't think that's necessary. I think I'd rather see Tottenham go after if you're going to get another centre-back for the squad, I think that you go and get, someone who's English, someone who's homegrown, ideally a left-footed player, and maybe Lloyd Kelly, or is probably a good enough answer for that role. But because we've got precious budget, and so many the areas we're looking to improve in, Chris, they're all in short supply and high demand, and so the prices are going to be toppy. So I don't want us to go out and have to spend a fortune on another centre back and then play a player who's not used to playing a DM. I'm okay as an experiment with Romero, but I don't think it's the long-term solution.
I don't think he'll put Romero in as an experiment, because part of his ethos with the players is that they'll all get their opportunity. By putting Romero in that position, you're kind of telling all the other players that they're not good enough for it. And I just don't think he'll do it for that reason. It's just my opinion. He was really big on that. So,
talking about opportunities, Ali, I know we're nearly an hour in. We haven't even mentioned the Chelsea game yet. So many questions and so many things to talk about. Ali, when you talk about opportunities, the Spurs under-21s have just won the league in Premier League 2. Yeah. And it seems that Ange hasn't really given a great deal of opportunities to the youth players. Are you surprised by that, particularly the injuries, suspensions, and so on that we've had this season?
It's hard to say. Without being there, he gets to see them all the time. As he'll want to protect them to a certain degree. He's not afraid of putting youngsters in. He's done it everywhere else he's been. But there's a lot more pressure, I would imagine, playing for Spurs in the Premier League as a youngster, especially when you're pushing for Europe and stuff. Maybe he would start bringing people like that in if they'd have to be exceptional. That's how I would see it. They'd have to be. He's got to be confident they can do the job, and they're robust enough and they can handle it. And he obviously doesn't see that at the moment. That's just my, he's the only one that'll ever answer that question, because, you're going to have quality in your under-21s. And why is he not using them? That's a question for Ange, because he sees them every day. And it might be that he's resigned to not using them this season till he gets them, because he'll want them playing a similar style, you would imagine, so that the follow-throughs and transitions quite easy for them. So he might just be getting that into their heads this season and seeing what comes from that. I don't know.
Oh, it's been a massive change, Ali, in the under-21s. I can tell you that the team were meant to get relegated from Premier League 2. They had a restructure of the leagues. They didn't get relegated. And now they've won the league. So it's been a hell of a difference there. Craig, let's bring you in. It's probably the longest on this podcast that you've stayed quiet.
All good. Great points by everybody. So it's fantastic.
Timo Werner is out for the season with a hamstring problem. Ben Davies is out with a calf issue for the rest of the season. Timo Werner has made 13 appearances for Spurs, 2 goals, 3 assists. He's on £165,000 a week, reportedly. £15 million in the summer, yes or no?
God, you always ask me this, and now he's injured. He's so different. because he hasn't got these extra 4 or 5 games, whatever it is we've got left. He can't prove anything anymore, can he? He can't go and get. Not that we expect him to go out and get a hat trick because we know what he's like, but for me, his numbers were up there, with other players in a similar position before he got injured. I know he's bloody awful at finishing, and you want your wingers to chip in with a few goals. But his creativity was good. The stats back that up. The amount of crosses he puts in and the amount of goals that have come from crosses, whether it be own goals or Johnson coming in or Richarlison or Son. So it's difficult to say. I have always said that I would sign Timo Werner permanently for 15.5 million because it's a no-brainer monetary-wise. Obviously, thinking about the wages, that is another issue. As a squad player, I think you could do a lot worse. It's just if we want to be aiming higher than Timo Werner, and if they're going to go for, because like I've said before, let's assume we're going to be seeing Bryan Gill going out the door. Let's assume he's going to let Ben Davies go. I'm trying to think of another winger that's Lo Celso either, but that surprised me this week when Lo Celso could be offered a new or extension to his contract. So he obviously likes what he sees in Lo Celso, which is bizarre because
it's all reports. It's all reports, Craig.
I know.
I wouldn't believe that.
Do you think? I don't know. I just got a feeling. I don't know who first broke that news.
If you were Gio Werner Lo Celso, the amount of years now you've been at the football club and you are getting very, very limited game time in this system, would you still be staying for next year? I don't think so.
Me personally, no, absolutely. But let's say you let Lo Celso go, then you let Gil go. Sessegnon, what's going to happen with him?
He's out of contract, isn't he?
He is next summer, isn't he? Or is it this summer?
I think it's this summer. I think there might be a year option to extend that we're not going to take. So I imagine he's just going to, drop off.
Disappear, right. So that's players you've got to replace. Even though, look, you could argue Sessegnon. We haven't even had his services for a year. And we've kind of managed without Sessegnon. Thinking about it now, if you're going to push me on Werner, I would probably not take up the option, but you've got to have a plan in place to replace him. Now, as I've said before, I listed a couple of wingers there. Neto from Wolves, I know he's going to be toppy, and I know he's injury prone, but a quality winger. And Elise, I've said it for the last 2 years. We should go and get Michael Elise.
We know.
I don't know how many times I've said it on here, but it drives me insane. He was 100% gettable before he signed his new contract with Palace. I don't know whether I'm seeing something that other people aren't, and obviously people can see what a player he is now. But I was like, my God, I've been banging the drum to go and get Elise, and it's just frustrating because he's English. Well, he's not English, but he counts as homegrown, I would imagine. I don't know where Palace got him from. If he came through their academy, I don't know. But look, quality Premier League proven player is what I'm getting at. Now, if I've said as well, Eze and Elise, test Palace's resolve. Go and offer them 100 million for the two. But that's the sort of caliber player you're going to get. I think they're gettable personally, but we've got to, like Sean said, we've got an alley. We've got to back this manager. We've got to back Ange and give him the players. There's not like names left, right, and centre flying around. I'm sure there will be a few more come June, but the same names keep cropping up again and again. So there's got to be some truth in these names. Jimenez, and the other lad from Final that was over here watching with him. Could have been coincidence. Could have been come over with his mate for the weekend. I don't know. Who knows? It's all speculation, but they're obviously doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and they want to get the deals done early. So I think you're going to see things move really quickly towards the end of the season.
Craig, going to stay with you because, of course, Ben Davies is now out for the remainder of the season. Your doggy is out for the remainder of the season. Who would you play now, a left back, for the remaining games?
Yeah, I mean, we all remember where we were when we signed Ben Davies. I mean, what a player he was. Sorry, YouTube, that's a personal joke. Melvin, if you're watching, bless you. Melvin remembers where he was when we signed Ben Davies. It was just some random statement he came out of, and it just sounded really funny. I get what you meant. Anyway, sorry, it's an in-joke. Sorry. I would personally, I'd love to see Mickey van der Ven at left back, but I don't think he's going to do it because he's such a linchpin in that back line.
That's actually one of the questions that Ange Postecoglou avoided today. Can Mickey van der Ven play at back? Yeah.
Oh, that's a terrible idea, isn't it? Like,
well,
you're going to get caught out. Like, how many times against Arsenal and how many times in every game, with the exception of Newcastle, has Mickey van der Ven's pace at centre back got us out of trouble? If you put him at left back and you ask him to play inverted and set up near the 10, who's going to have the pace to get us out of trouble like Mickey van der Ven can?
Who exactly? Is it? Emerson Royale?
Left back is Emerson Royale for me tomorrow night.
Yeah, I agree. And the reason being, another reason you can't put Van der Ven left back. Nicholas Jackson is possibly one of the worst players I've seen at Chelsea as a striker. But, he scored a hat-trick against us. He nearly fell over his own feet for the third one. And I think the reason he only scored that third one because he didn't know what he was doing, let alone Vicario trying to get. You see glimpses and you think, God, there is a player in there. And then I think, no, there's not. So, but you just know with his pace over the top, because he is quick, he will get him behind us. So I think for that reason alone, he'll keep Van der Ven at centre back. And look, he is our pace. Barrero's quick, but he's not that quick. Nobody's that quick. So I think you're right. I think Emerson will come in at left back. He's done a job there before. He's defensively pretty solid. So I think you'll see Porro, Romero, Van der Ven, and Emerson tomorrow.
Ali, you've spoken a lot about expectation amongst the fans this evening. What expectation should the Spurs fans have for next year? Say if Spurs were playing in the Europa League. I remember the first time you come on this show, you stated to me and Craig that Ange Postecoglou takes the cup competitions very seriously. He made 10 changes against Fulham in the League Cup. We were out of the competition in August. Sadly, we then drew, after beating Burnley, we drew Manchester City in the FA Cup. Of course, it's always difficult against the treble winners. But what expectation do you think Spurs fans should have for next year?
So I think you've just kind of brought up pretty much everything that needs to happen to have a successful season. So you're talking about Timo Werner and stuff. He's not for me. I just don't. He hasn't got that X factor that I think you need. You've got other players there. You talk about losing and having to replace them, and then you talk about youth. So if you look at it you would hope from a sensible point of view, you're going to get rid of the deadwood that doesn't fit into his system, and he's got no problem in doing that on a big scale if he needs to shake it up a bit. And he brings in the player for those positions because he knows he can use the youth. And then that gives him a bigger budget to get the players he wants. That's what I would hope he would go and do now. Is right, we've got these youth players that can play where needed. Not ideal, but we need to use our youth. That's why it's there. But I want quality over quantity, and that's how you would hope he would go about his transfer business this year. And if he does that, then there's so much to be done. If he doesn't get all of that done because he's not backed with it, then I could then give you a better idea of where I think your season next year will go, because he needs that help. You guys watch them week in, week out. I don't, but there's problems there. We've talked about midfield, we've talked about set pieces, we've talked about defence, you're talking about left backs now. You're talking about no striker. We could be here all day just telling you about the problems that Spurs have, and yet they're fifth in the league.
Right.
If you understand what I mean. So, all he's basically, that's why he's saying, look, I've got more to worry about than zonal marking, mate. If you understand what I mean. He's got a whole squad to rebuild pretty much still. He's only at the start, and he keeps saying about the start and it's a progression and everything else. He's got to be able to get people in that can play his system by next season, because he knows how important next season will be. If he has a season next season with his signings, and let's just say, for instance, he fails to get Champions League, then that'll be a failure even to him. if he gets fifth this year, because there's no progression there. You know, now we might argue, look, the squad have progressed. We're playing better, we're conceding less, we're doing this. It's just that everyone else raised their game. It will still be a failure to all the fans, you know, because if he gets back and you're excited, you'll expect minimum requirement next year, would be my opinion, is top 4 and a trophy. Because
Sean,
that's what I would want.
Yeah. Sean, when you mentioned earlier about midfielders, who isn't good enough for you?
I say good enough. I think they're good enough players. I think they're just not a good fit. I don't think that Bissouma is a 6, and I think in the 8 role there are players that I would rather see in there. I think Bentancur has the edge over Bissouma in the 8. I think Pape Sarr has a far higher ceiling in the 8 than Bissouma, and you know, consequently, as much as I rate him as a player, I don't think that there's room in the squad for 3 or 4 8s that are going to fight for one position if you're going to go after an improvement in the 6. He's okay as a rotational 6 if you want to keep that. Højbjerg, another player, ticks a lot of boxes, but doesn't have the pace for me to cover the ground in the 6. And I also think his decision-making under pressure is poor. Again, a good player, very well-rounded, versatile, would be a brilliant fit for a lot of teams. And I think Tottenham should also consider the fact that even though he's got a year left on his contract, he has a lot of residual value to a lot of teams in Europe. He's proven his worth in Germany before he came to Tottenham, or before he came to the Premier League. So I think we could cash in on him in this summer. So I think if we're looking to cash in on 2 of the midfielders that are there, I would probably say that Bentancur gets the nod above Bissouma, and Højbjerg probably has the most residual value. So that's where I would go to liquidate. Pape Sarr for me is brilliant. Not for every situation though, mind. I do think certain physical games require. I don't think he has that. I think he has amazing mobility, amazing passing range, and I think he also has a personality that he understands spatial awareness more than anyone else in the midfield. So, and I think his ceiling is brilliant. So I'm all about Pape Sarr. But there's certain games where you're going to come up against physical midfield battles, and maybe he's not the right guy. So yeah, those are the 2 for me. If we were going to move 2 on, I don't expect us to move 2 on from that midfield. But if we were to move 2 on, I'd say Boomer and Højbjerg are the bottom of the pecking order of the players that play. Ollie Skip for me, I'm sorry to say it. I know he's one of our own, but I don't think he has a future at Tottenham. In reality, if we're trying to move on to the next level, I'm not sure he has any value apart from being a homegrown player.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting today how Postecoglou mentioned Ollie Skip being back for this game. I thought I'd be actually surprised that he's even in the squad, actually. Sean, let's stay with you. I want to talk about James Maddison. Maddison's productivity has dipped since returning from injury. You mentioned this earlier. In terms of goals, assists, expected duels, shots, everything. Expected assists, chances created. We've got 5 games left in the Premier League. He's going to want to go to the Euros. Do you expect Ange Postecoglou to possibly drop him for the Chelsea game on Thursday?
I don't expect him to, but I think it's the right thing to do. Look, I love James Maddison. I thought his start to a Tottenham career was fantastic. I actually think that a lot of everyone's putting down his drop in form down to the fact that he struggled to return from his injury. I think there's some truth in it, but I actually think that the tactics, as we've moved through the season, I think that if you look at the average heat maps of the team, average heat maps of certain positions, and the fact that the opposition are adapting to our approach in 2024 and have figured out a template, what we're seeing is a situation where quite often 2021, 2019 players on the pitch are all crowded into the kind of final third, and quite often are quite narrow as well. And so you've got a lot of players crammed into a 15, 20 square meter box. And that doesn't really allow him to have any freedom to move, freedom to find the pass. And I think that kind of the consequences of the cat and mouse game in the tactics have, essentially really hindered his ability to find the freedom. He's one of the quickest feet in the Tottenham team. He's certainly one of the most technical players. And I have no issues that he'll figure it out. He's intelligent as well. So I think it's a combination of his of him struggling with a little bit of fitness. His injuries not quite there. Certainly, there's something there, but I do also think that he needs to, especially as I said at the start in my first answer, if Ange is handing over a lot of responsibility to the players to kind of figure it out, then he has to be one of those players that figures it out. And I know he's trying to do it. He drops deep a lot of the time to pick the ball up in shallow areas, but then when that happens, are the other players reacting to him? Are players like Pape Sarr or Pedro Porro, are they moving forward enough to give him an option before the compression happens? And ultimately, when we do get it up the top end of the pitch, everything slows down. We move from, we're playing on a level of grass that length, and then as soon as we get into the final third, it feels like we're playing in length in grass that's like 3 times longer because everything slows down. And I think that James Maddison is struggling in that environment. So, but listen, I think he'll figure it out. I think it will take a bit of time. I think once his injuries are behind him, in terms of for the immediacy, I absolutely am on board with him. He is one of my candidates to be dropped tomorrow. There's a few of them. I want to see Lo Celso come in. I don't understand why he hasn't had more minutes than he's got when he's fit. I think he's a brilliant player. I also think that, and I'm not sure if we're going to talk about it, but there's a few other players that I'd also like to see come in tomorrow night against Chelsea as well.
Well, let's go for it, Sean. Let's go for it. This is the team that faced Arsenal. So what changes would you like to make, and what changes do you think Postecoglou will make? I know, that may differ. The team that faced Arsenal, Vicario, Porro, Romero, Van der Ven, Davies. We know that Davies will be replaced, obviously. Bentancur, Højbjerg, Kulusevski, Maddison, Timo Werner. We know that Timo Werner will be replaced, obviously, and Heung-min Son.
Yeah, so obviously Ben Davies is out, so Emerson comes in. I would like to see Maddison dropped and give Gio Lo Celso a chance, even if it is just putting him in the shop window. He is someone that has residual value as well. I'm not sure about, again, Craig, and you guys were talking earlier about the kind of commentary that maybe we're going to sign him again or renew the contract. Don't know if there's any truth in it, but presuming he's in the shop window, then this is an opportunity for him to shine and hopefully to add some zeros or whatever to the number. So I'd like to see him play. I think it makes sense against Chelsea, who have got a riddle with injuries. Chelsea have got 14 first-team players out. So if we're going to break the hoodoo, then never a better chance than tomorrow night. I know this is a crazy one, and I'm sure people would think I'm absolutely nuts, but I would actually I'd be okay with Sonny starting on the bench as well. Keep Kulusevski on the right. Put Richarlison up into the 9 position, and then put Brennan Johnson on the left-hand side with Gio Lo Celso behind it. I know that's a crazy one because Sonny always keeps his place in the team, but I think against Chelsea's defensive line, lots of issues with Badiashile. I'm not sure if he's fit, and Disasi's definitely out. Their back line tomorrow is going to be interesting, and whoever they do put in is going to have more of a physical approach than a technical one. And so, given Sonny's inability recently to handle the 9 role, he's not very good back to goal. On the left-hand side, I don't know. I don't mind it if Sonny gets put back onto the left and you put Richarlison into the 9 and keep things physical and be a little bit, I'm not sure if I can swear, but S-Housery. Keep that kind of, get that mind games going on. But like I say, I'm also very okay with seeing Brennan Johnson start on the left with Kulusevski on the right and Richarlison up top, and then bring Sonny off against a tired Chelsea in the second half and let him attack the game with some fresh legs with half an hour to play. Because I do think there's an opportunity against an injury-ravaged Chelsea to get a first victory or a second victory there in 33 years. Never a better time than to do it tomorrow night. And I think it's going to require a little bit of some, just outside of the box thinking.
I completely agree with you, Sean, about Richarlison coming in. I think that Sonny is definitely best on the left. Craig, what are you thinking?
Yeah, similar. I 100% want Richarlison to start tomorrow. And I've said for a while, I don't think Richarlison's the answer going forward as our number 9. I think we need to upgrade on him. Yeah. Opinion, do you keep Richarlison around? Would he want to stay around if he's not first choice? Well, he wasn't first choice when Kane was here. And I remember thinking it was a great bit of business because we, at the time anyway, we strengthened in what we had in a position of strength. That front line was pretty good. So I'll be happy for Richarlison to stay around. I think he's hard working. I've said before, his work rate is second to none. The Housery Sean was mentioning, 100% behind that. I think we saw the game change when he came on Sunday. change to a more physical approach. Sonny, just for I love him so much, but he cannot do that job. He can't play with his back to goal. He's much better on the left where he's running at players and can cut and have a shot left or right footed, just as strong with either. So personally, I'd like to see Sonny out on the left, and I would start him tomorrow, but put Richarlison through the middle. I think too, Maddison probably deserves to be dropped because his form has dropped off a cliff. I think Brennan Johnson on the right, and for me, and I'm totally torn between, because I totally get Sean's comments on board about Lo Celso. It would be between him and Kulusevski in the 10 for me. I'm not saying this is what Ange will do, by the way. This is what I'd like to see. Out of the two, I would imagine, just purely for, as history would tell us anyway, he does like Kulusevski, so I'd probably go for Kulusevski in the 10. And the back four, what we've said with Emerson coming in on the left. Midfield, I can't see Skip coming in, as much as he seems to have hinted that he's going to certainly be back in the squad. I think it will probably be Bissouma, Bentancur and Sarr. I wouldn't be surprised with Bissouma on the bench.
Yeah,
Craig,
sorry, I completely skipped over the midfield. I think that Pape Sarr has to come back in. He was a big difference in the second half against Arsenal. And in the 6, yeah, I'd expect either Højbjerg or Bissouma to come in, but Bissouma's probably my pick for that one.
I was just going to say the point about Lo Celso. I've just been waiting for the time that Lo Celso just grabs the opportunity, plays a number of games, and just takes that opportunity, because I don't think we've seen it yet of him in a Spurs shirt. Do you really think that, Craig, that he would be a Spurs player next year?
Celso, yeah. I can't see it personally. If I was him, I'd want to move on. I mean, he's had what, two loans, 3 loans since he's been here.
Having said that, I feel like I'm asking the same question because I said this last year. But
you did, and the year before probably. But you know, he's from that summer where we bought Ndombele, isn't he? And what's he got? A year left, the same as Ndombele. And you know, we've got all these players coming back, which I keep forgetting. We've got Ndombele coming back in 3 or 4 weeks. It's mental, isn't it? So there's so much work to be done, so many players to get out the door. Lo Celso for me would be one that I think we need to move on, because as Sean said, there's value in him. He's highly rated in Spain, but there's so many players coming back from loan as well we've got this homegrown quota issue as well, so they're going to have to sort that out.
Not just the homegrown, but the club trained. There's an issue with club trained for Europe, right? That's why everyone's talking about Kyle Walker-Peters coming back, because he's a bit talented, and he's one of our own kind of thing. So yeah, scary time.
Ali, let's come to you on talking about players, and Sean's mentioned a number of our midfielders today. Did you see Ange really improve some players that Celtic fans thought they're not actually very good, we expect them to go out the door, but yet he actually improved their game going forward?
Yeah, definitely. There's quite a number of players, I think, that we had a lad who was at Dundee United, came back, ended up a steady, good right back, and then we brought in Alistair Johnson, the Canadian lad, so he doesn't get a game now, but look, I think sometimes you can look at guys and think he's a good player, and then you've got to think of, is he the right player to move us to the next level? And you've got so many players that clearly can't get you to that level, or you'd be there. So Ange needs to get rid of a load of them and bring in people that he believes can get you to the next level. So that would be my view. Is that it doesn't matter who you've got. I mean, you've mentioned guys there that are going out. He'll see all of that as opportunities of bringing in his own people that can move to the next level. And he'll back himself to do that and pick the right people. One thing he did do is he tended to get his recruitment right at Celtic for his system.
Yeah.
There wasn't very many failures, really. And some of it might have been Celtic have got a lot of project players. Some of it might have been that we'll bring them in as project players and they maybe didn't play. But yeah, to me, he'll see the shit show you guys have got, really, and have had for a while. I mean, in Ndombele and the amount of people you're putting out on for high money, out on loans and stuff, he's going to want to rectify that by saying, right, I want some of that money to get the team I need to put out at the start of the season that I believe is going to challenge for that title. And that's all he'll be thinking about. And I'm not saying he's not naive enough to think that we'll go and win the title next year. But what he will be saying is we're going to try and win the title next year, and this is the players we need to do it with. So, I mean, I think Son should always play on the left. I just think that he's almost world class on that side. Why he's playing up front when you've got Richarlison, I 100% would agree with that. I prefer Maddison on the right, to be fair. I don't think he's that great a 10. But that's just my opinion on him. I think that he's got enough skill sets on there. His delivery is very good, and again, that's part of what Ange is all about, his wingers and everyone coming and taking that side on. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, mate. But there was a lot of work to be done at the start of the season. He's made inroads. That's all he's done. He's still got a lot to do, I think. And talking to you guys lets me see even more. I mean, you're all today, if you can take anything away from it, is you've all brought up the issues that you've got. Nobody spoke about the entertaining football, the great games that you've watched, the raised expectations, the personable person that he is himself. Nobody's bringing that up at the moment. They're all talking about all
the Tottenham fans, Ali. We always focus on the reasons.
No, that's not true, actually, Ali.
But he's going to try.
We talk about that every week.
Yeah, so he's hoping to change that mentality. He doesn't want you talking about that. He's saying, look, let me deal with the problems. I know what they are.
Yeah.
You guys, I want you to have expectations. He said that many a time. That's the fans. They should have expectations. They should want to win the league. They want to win trophies. He's not there to be fifth in the league every year, playing nice football and naive football, as people are calling it. He's setting up what he believes is a team that can challenge for the league. Now, he's nowhere near that at the moment, and we all know why, because he's walked into a loony bin, to be honest with you, because it's so dysfunctional. It's had so many managers that have picked so many different players from every window. They've had hundreds of millions of pounds to spend, and they've brought in players that don't fit a system at all. He needs to clear that out and say, that's the system we're playing, end of. And Levy's not daft. He's backing him for that, or he wouldn't have brought him in. So he'll know the plan. They'll have discussed. One thing I'll tell you is he gets his work done early in the window. He doesn't wait till the last day of a window. He wants his players in so he can get them coached before they play. So Tottenham will know exactly who they're going for this summer. Who's in, who's out, everything. That's already done. There's no decisions to be made on that. He knows who's staying and who's not. And your team selections might be suggesting who's definitely going. If they're not getting many minutes, then he doesn't rate them. That would be my view. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. He's had to work with out a striker. We mentioned all that, out of number 6. There's a lot of things that he's been missing this year, and he's still done all right. I mean, I saw a comment that, Conte managed to get used to 4th until he lit fire. But yeah, but Conte had Kane. You know what I mean? And he had a striker, and it is harder to play or to win in a way with Ange's style of football, because you're then playing against a low block. When you play football and you've got a Harry Kane and you're playing counter-attacking football, it becomes a lot simpler, because him and Son have got such great ability between them, and they've got plenty of space to do it in. Maddison, what he talks about with Maddison is he needs to understand that, look, you've now in compressed space, you need to take that ball in, but he needs, like you were saying, Sean, he needs that option to be able to move the ball quickly. If he's not getting that, he's something to be like an old-style winger where he's meant to dribble past people or things. And that, you don't get away with that anymore. All teams are too good for that. You're not going to get someone constantly dribbling past. Even guys with pace can't do that all the time. So, to me, he's got a lot to work out. He knows.
Sean, let's come to you. Since the Premier League started in '92, we've only won twice away at the Emirates, once at Highbury, once at the Emirates, once away at Chelsea, at Stamford Bridge in 34 years. What is it about these games? And let me throw Liverpool in there, because, of course, we face them on Sunday. We always struggle at Anfield. What is it about these grounds where we always struggle under different managers, different years, different decades, different players? What is it about these grounds?
Well, look, I mean, I think first and foremost, in the 30-year period of the Premier League, most of those 3 teams, I know Chelsea maybe didn't get to their level until maybe only 20 years ago, even sooner than that, under Abramovich. But generally speaking, Arsenal and Liverpool have always been a more competitive, stronger team than us. And, you know, playing at home is always going to be difficult. I would imagine that you could look at most teams, not just Tottenham, and look at their, you know, performances at Anfield or at Arsenal and think that it's not too dissimilar. But that's not to kind of dismiss or undermine how embarrassing those results are. And I think there's a bit of an inferiority complex. I do think that Tottenham, you know, we've been so close yet so far for so long from success. I think that starts to become, you know, a bit of a hoodoo in and of itself. I think that when it comes to playing against the bigger teams, Tottenham have never been particularly good. And, you know, absent this year, our record against the top 4 or 5 teams has been pretty good, apart from obviously the Chelsea game earlier on in the season and what happened on Sunday. We're undefeated against them in the Premier League, the rest of them. So look, I'm always someone that thinks that, you know, it's not okay. Tottenham as a football club might not have won at Chelsea for a long period of time, but this particular Tottenham, this particular 11, this particular manager, this particular version of us has never been beaten by Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. And so we shouldn't necessarily walk into it with that kind of glass half empty approach. But for some reason, I don't know whether players and the football club, you know, take too much time listening to channels like yours or mine or whatever, and dial into the fan kind of energy. But I do think that as a fan base, we do have a bit of an inferiority complex against the top 4 opposition or the traditional sort of bigger teams. And it's something that has to change. And as I say, for me personally, Chris, looking at the likely lineups tomorrow night, I know we're not blessed with a full strength team either, but Chelsea have got a riddle with injuries. I would also say, just on a side note, not that I think this isn't necessarily a massive factor, but Chelsea are only 5 points away from the Conference League. And if they've got a game in hand, and if they win, they're 2 points behind Newcastle. And with Europa League probably out of touch, qualifying for the Conference League, even if they go on and win it, would only give them about 12 million quid in revenue. But what it would also dictate is that they would have to then adhere to the 80% threshold next season around PSR, like the kind of squad cost ratios of what you can spend. And we already heard earlier on this season that if they beat Liverpool in the Carabao Cup, then they would have rejected or potentially rejected the invitation, which they can do via the cup competitions. But I'm not sure they can do if they qualify through league. And so if Chelsea do qualify in 7th spot and qualify for the Conference League, they will then be at risk of UEFA sanctions next year. And so I don't know if that's a kind of part of the zeitgeist at Chelsea. And maybe finishing 7th isn't in their best interest. And so with everything else kind of compounding on itself, maybe there's less of an incentive for Chelsea to do as well as they usually do against us. I genuinely think we're going to win tomorrow night. I think we are going to break the hoodoo for a bunch of different reasons.
Sean, what have you made of Mauricio Pochettino's time at Chelsea and the job that he's done so far?
I think I think at the moment I'm not going to call it a poison chalice, but I think that Chelsea, there's so much pressure on them. The owners come in, doesn't really understand the intricacies of football ownership. I think there's a hell of a lot of pressure. They spent an absolute fortune. They've also bought a load of young players that haven't had any time. If I was talking earlier, if I'm going to be consistent and say that, you know, for Ange's philosophy to be embedded, and there's a lot of responsibility on the players to figure that out, you know, having a young squad, a young nucleus is a good thing, but it also requires time and patience to allow these players to kind of figure each other out. I would say that Pochettino is probably going through a similar kind of experience in its early days for him. He's got, he's battling with injuries, battling with the pressures of the job, and fan base that are very expectant because of the environment in which he's inherited. I don't think Chelsea should sack him. I think that they should allow it to play out. In terms of how has he done so far, look, it hasn't been impressive, obviously, but he has got to a semi-final in one cup, a final in the other. So if he'd lifted the Carabao Cup, it would have been, I think, a successful first season for him. Look, I don't have any issues with the guy. I wish him well. I don't think Chelsea should fire him, but I wouldn't say this season has been one to write home about for him, if I'm honest.
Craig, let's come to you. Chelsea in the last 3 months, they've played 11 games in the Premier League. They've won 4. They've played 13. They've won 4. They've drawn 5, and they've lost 2. The 2 defeats were against Wolves and against Arsenal recently. But their most recent game, they drew 2-2 at Aston Villa, where they had the ball in the back of the net in the dying seconds. It looked like they were going to win the game. The goal got disallowed. But when you look in the month of April, they beat Man United at home 4-3, drew 2-2 away at Sheffield United, beat Everton 6-0, then lost to Arsenal. Then, of course, that draw against Aston Villa. Is it fair to say that Mauricio Pochettino is doing a fairly decent job, but the Chelsea fans don't like him because he, of course, managed Spurs?
I think he's, like Sean said there, I think if they'd managed to get a cup, you have to say it's a successful season for Chelsea. They'd have won more than we have. I mean, thankfully they didn't win it, but look, I know you've got your own feelings on Poch, Chris. The betrayal element of it, and I get all that. I still like Poch. You could see in his press conference today the love he still has for the club, and I still think one day he will be back and manage Spurs again. But Chelsea are funny. They've had some cracking results and they've had some terrible results. A bit like us, I suppose, in many ways. That's why I think it's going to be a really good, even battle tomorrow. I think there's going to be goals galore tomorrow. I don't think we're going to be able to sit back and relax at any point during the game. You never can at the Bridge. I know it's one of your least favourite places to go, and I totally get that. So it's going to be a very interesting game. It really is. And Poch said again that the emotional side of it, playing Tottenham, he's obviously going to want to beat us, but he's still got that attachment to the club. I'm not saying he'd do us any favours. Of course, he's not going to. But he's limited to the players he can pick. I think they've got some good individuals. What's the lad in the middle? Madueke, their number sort of 10. I think he's a brilliant player. I'd love to see him at Tottenham. Nicholas Jackson, you would hope, would be in Romero's back pocket. Incoming Nicholas Jackson hat-trick. Now I've said that, you watch. But look, I think it's going to be a really tight game. I'm actually looking forward to it, and I'm like Sean. I'm actually quietly confident we're going to get a result. I think we're going to break that hoodoo tomorrow. I do. I genuinely do. I don't know why. I must be mad, but I think we're going to I think it's going to be a good evening.
Ali, I always love having neutrals on because, of course, there's no bias. So, how do you see this game going? Chelsea v Spurs. We've won once there in 34 years.
Well, I'm not going to kind of rub it in. I think why the Chelsea fans are unhappy is partly because they're used to winning, and the fact that they've got a team now that is so far down the league with the money they've spent, they're used to just spending money and bringing it home and doing well and like I say, challenging rather than competing. It's really hard for him to get consistency, is it? He's got a young team, a load of new players, no real system that he can put in place because a lot of these players haven't really worked at that level, at that systems. There's a load of things. Talk about basket case, that's got to be the biggest one in the league. To keep them in the league is probably only because they've got individual brilliance about them. So it depends what team turns up. I think Chelsea could do you over. It's as simple as that. Or you could do them over. That's how I see tomorrow night, is whatever team turns up and whoever goes out and takes responsibility on the pitch are the ones that are going to win tomorrow night. And I think that's what Ange keeps talking about, is, look, the players need to take responsibility once across that line. Everyone's the same. And I just think that Spurs should have the quality on top of the organisation, as well as the nous is probably the best word, because you ask, one of the questions you would ask is why you haven't won in some of the grounds for so long. A lot about that is, if you take the ability of the other teams out of it and how good they are, it's about having that belief that you can go and do it on a consistent level. So again, this is something Ange is trying to build the team in. He wants the team to have that belief And by playing this kind of gung-ho approach, it'll probably turn a lot of those results around if he lasts for 5 or 6 years. Because he's going to get them out there and say, right, we can turn anyone over. It doesn't matter if it's Real Madrid, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City. I told you at the start of all of this, he'll go at Man City, and I think he's done an all right job against them. But that's because they play similar football. When you play a low block, Chelsea won't do that, so they're probably an all right team to play. The harder teams are the ones that are going to sit back and hit you on the break. And as you say, Arsenal, they just played well on the night, mate. But it's not much you can do about it.
I've got 3 final questions for you all, and they're all quick ones. Sean, let's start with you. Score prediction for the Chelsea game, a score prediction for the Liverpool game, and where you think Spurs will end up at the end of the season in the table.
3-2 Tottenham tomorrow night. 2-2 against Liverpool, and 5th.
Craig?
I'm going to say 3-1 Tottenham tomorrow. I was going to say 2-2 at Liverpool, so I'll go. I think it will be a draw. I don't think Liverpool are playing as well as they were. Obviously out of the title race now, so I'm going to go for 1-1, and I think we're going to finish 5th. And we bear it in mind, we only need 6 points to almost pretty much guarantee 5th. Yeah. So I would like to think we'll get at least 6.
Ali, what are you going with?
I think it'll be 3-1 tomorrow night for Spurs. That was my thought when I knew you were going to ask it, to be honest. I agree with Sean on 2-2. For some reason, I've just got that. That's what I think. I think 4th's out of reach now because of who you've still got to play and who they've still got to play. I'd love to see a blip off of them and you guys going and win all your games till the end of the season, and that's from a hammer. And I just can't. I think you've just lost that too many the last few games, and it's just that's knocked the stuffing out of getting into 4th. I think, because Aston Villa had their blip, I think, and then that was the opportunity, and then have a blip after that. I think it took the sails out of it. To be fair, so I think 3-1, 2-2, and 5th.
Villa are very inconsistent, and you never know. If Spurs can get 2 great results on Thursday and on Sunday, you never know, because the other games are very winnable.
Chris, can I ask you a quick question? All 3 of you. In a scenario where Tottenham win against Chelsea and Brighton get points against Villa, in a scenario where Tottenham go and do something against Liverpool, and where the game against Manchester City, penultimate game of the season, 4th place is 100% up for grabs, but we need to beat City to do it. But in so doing, you'd hand over the reins of the title to Arsenal. Do you guys care more about what's in the best interest of Tottenham, or do you care more about stopping Arsenal being the title?
You're going to get everyone will get criticised whatever answer they give, but I'm always, Sean, a man who always worries about my club. So,
100%.
so if it's going to progress us as a football club, and it means that the transfer kitty is a lot more money because we're in the Champions League, then of course we've got to think about our future. So I don't care what any other club does.
100%. Good answer.
But if it is in a scenario where we play Manchester City and it's about City winning to win the title, then I think that, as I said to Ali earlier, put the whole under-21s out. Put Mikey Moore, 16-year-old kid, out. They need game time. So
well, if it doesn't matter, right? If we're going to finish 5th anyway, then
exactly.
I'm all for that. Exactly. If we finish 4th, then if it's on the cards, I think we've got to go for it. For me, I don't know.
I think that you've got to go for it either way, because to build that winning mentality, if that last game of the season for Man City is for them to win the league, for instance, immaterial what's going on elsewhere, that's the games you want to be going and winning, because that's a pressure environment, and that's where you learn, and that's where you get better. So I think you've got to go. Ange will anyway. Well, it doesn't matter what we think. Ange isn't going to go there and say, I'm worried about X, Y, and Z. I want to put a marker down for next season that we're coming for you and we'll be better next season. How much can you improve and how much can we improve? That's what he'll be doing. And that's what
You actually mentioned this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, I think, Craig, didn't you, about how weird the atmosphere would be if Spurs were beating Manchester City, but actually then give Arsenal the title.
Yeah, I did, and Sean's just reminded me of that nightmare. So thanks, Sean.
Sorry, mate. Sorry, Craig.
No, you're good. I must agree, I'm the same, and it might not be a popular thing. All I care about is Tottenham, really. I think if we've got a chance to progress and get fourth, if it's in the bag, then when we just go hell for leather and try and beat City. If that hands Arsenal the title, then so be it. We will not be the kingmaker in the title. Arsenal are there and have won the title because they deserve to win it. There's no luck winning the league. You know, if they're up there and they deserve to win it, then they win it through the results they've put in, the performances they've put in. The fact that we're playing City second last game and we could stop them winning is neither here nor there. Whatever will be, will be. I know that's not going to be a popular thing, but all I care about really is Tottenham. Couldn't give a toss about Arsenal realistically. And yeah, it's going to be horrible if they win the league. But do you know what? They will have deserved it. You're going to have to man up and say, sorry, mate, you deserve it, you know? And just coming back to your point, Chris, it would be the most Spurs thing ever to have, like, you know, out of the Champions League and whatever. So they say, right, we'll put the under-21s out, and they go and pump City 5-0.
Yeah.
It would be the most Tottenham thing ever.
Yeah.
So you just never know in football.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Pleasure having you here again. Where can people find you and what you're up to at the moment?
Just seem to be doing, I think I'm on every show now till the end of the season, so which is all good fun.
You can take over whenever you like, mate.
I think I am tomorrow till you get safely out of enemy territory, aren't I? So
absolutely,
you'll have to suffer me for the first half hour or so. At Dearman 9 on X, if you want to give me a follow, that would be lovely. But thanks for having me on. It's been a great, good upbeat podcast, and really good to be on with Ali again, and Sean. I love your content as well, so it's great to meet you.
You too,
and Ali, thank you so much for coming on. I know you don't really do social media. What are you up to at the moment, and where could people find you if they want to?
I'm just busy with work, mate, to be honest with you. I might be getting you to put our agency details on. We're starting to get some work down in London now. So any HGV drivers and stuff we'll be looking for, I'll get you to do a bit of wee marketing for me. So yeah, that'll be about it. I'm busy, mate, and it's always a pleasure coming on to. As you know, I don't think I even knew what a podcast was when you first asked me. I had an idea, but I was kind of amazed at the amount of people that watch your show. So, yeah, it was a bit of a shocker. I made sure I brushed my hair the next time, you know. I thought it was just a meeting the four of us, you know.
Ali, it's amazing when you look at, if you won't see it because you're not on Twitter, but when Chris posts up where in the world people are watching, like been number one in Korea, Colombia, bizarrely, Russia once, Chris, as well, wasn't it? It was really, really strange, but yeah, mental.
Incredible, yeah. So, Ali, thank you so much for coming back, and
always a pleasure
having you on again very soon. And Sean, you've been an absolutely wonderful guest. Thank you so much for coming on, and keep up your fantastic content. And your YouTube channel is growing massively every single week, and well deserved. Keep up the great work. What can people expect?
Nice meeting you.
What can people expect if they don't follow you?
Yeah, so well, first of all, before I get to that, Chris, listen, I love your channel, mate. I've been watching it for a long time. You were part of the inspiration for me to get started, mate. So really, thanks for having me on. Craig, absolute pleasure to meet you, mate. I've just followed you back on Twitter. And thanks, Ali, mate. Absolute pleasure as well, buddy. Good luck to Celtic for the rest of the season and for going forward.
Mate, in the bag.
Of course, it always is, right? In terms of my content, Spurs talk shows where I do daily videos with my dog, take my dog out for a walk, and whatever's in the kind of transfer news or Tottenham sort of news, views and clues, I'll sort of digest that, do some stat stuff. I do occasional watch-alongs. Obviously I'm at the stadium for most of the games, but all Tottenham content, essentially daily footage. If you guys are interested in football finance related stuff that isn't to do with Tottenham necessarily, then I've got a second channel which is just sort of getting started, which is Sean Butler TV. And because I've got a background in finance, so I'm very much interested in that stuff. So I do all of the kind of FFP, PSR stuff on Sean Butler TV, which is another side gig that I'm trying to work on. But thank you for having me,
Sure.
Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Sean, can I just ask one quick question before we go, Chris?
Sure.
Sean, I don't know if you've done anything about this. These new rules that they've voted to bring in about the changes, and if it gets passed, do you think that will affect Tottenham in a good way, a bad way, or not really make much difference at all?
So it depends. It's unclear whether the new rule that's been implemented around anchoring, if it's a bolt-on to the intended squad cost ratio thing, then it doesn't really affect anybody. The only teams it will affect are Manchester City and maybe Manchester United. If they were to start to generate £1 billion in revenue or more, then they will be limited by a multiple of the revenue that's generated by the lowest. Like, let's say it's Leicester in the 26-27 season. If they own 100 million quid, then City won't be able to spend 70%, as is currently in the rules for European competition. They'll be limited to 500 million, a 5 times multiplier. So they'll be able to spend less. So the 3 teams that voted against it were United, City, and Aston Villa. Aston Villa is a weird one. I'm not entirely sure why they voted against it, but they did. And Chelsea abstained, but Tottenham voted for it. So, you know, it doesn't really affect many teams. If it's to remove the 85% threshold for PSR, and it just allows any team to spend as much as they want up to that multiplier, then the real beneficiary is going to be teams like Newcastle, who can spend essentially 2 times the amount of money that their club generates because they've got, you know, owners with incredibly deep pockets. So it's all about trying to figure out the best way to level the competitive playing field without jeopardizing the ongoing sustainability of football clubs. And there's no easy kind of model to figure it out, but what they're doing is kind of they're getting somewhere close enough to it. So it doesn't really have too much of an impact for Tottenham.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you very much. Well, Craig, Sean, Ali, it's been a pleasure talking to all of you this evening. Hopefully we will be back. Well, we will be back tomorrow. Hopefully talking about a Spurs win at Stamford Bridge, and hopefully another 3 points in the bag and stay 5th in that Premier League table, gunning for that 4th spot. We will see you there. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Come on, you Spurs.
Good luck, guys.